Picture this. It's 3:30 in the morning, and my bedroom looks like an alien abduction scene. Blinding white light streams through every crack in my blackout curtains. I stumble to the window, squinting like a vampire at sunrise, and there she is, Karen, my neighbor, standing in her yard, with not one, not two, but 6 industrial-grade spotlights aimed directly at my house. She's wearing a bathrobe, and the most satisfied smile I've ever seen on a human face. That's when I knew the war had just begun. But what she didn't know was that I am an electrical engineer with access to maritime equipment, suppliers, and absolutely zero patience for petty nonsense. By the end of this story, my yard would have its own functioning lighthouse, and Karen's house would be the only target. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Marcus Webb, and 6 months ago, I bought my dream house in Meadowbrook Estates, a quiet suburban neighborhood, about 20 minutes outside the city. The house was perfect. Victorian-style, wraparound porch. Huge backyard, backing up to a small wooded area. I'm an electrical engineer who works from home most days, designing power systems for commercial buildings. All I wanted was peace, quiet, and maybe a nice place to drink my morning coffee while watching the sunrise. The neighborhood seemed great at first. Manicured lawns, friendly waves from passing joggers, the occasional block party. The HOA, headed by a woman named Barbara Chun, seemed reasonable. Barbara was in her early 50s, always dressed professionally in blazers even for neighborhood meetings, with blonde hair, red glasses, and a friendly demeanor. She ran a tight ship, but was fair. The monthly fees were reasonable at $125, and the rules made sense. Keep your lawn maintained. No parking on the street overnight. No offensive decorations. Standard stuff. Then I met Karen. Karen Whitmore lived in the house directly across the street from mine. She was in her mid-40s, with dark hair always pulled back in a severe bun, and the kind of face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile sometime in the early 2000s. She wore pearl necklaces and cardigan sweaters like they were armor. Within a week of moving in, she'd introduced herself by complaining about my moving truck blocking her view for 3 hours. "This is a respectable neighborhood," she'd said, arms crossed, standing at the end of my driveway like a disapproving school principal. "We have standards here." I'd apologized, explained it was moving day, and thought that would be the end of it. Primera agua es wrong. Over the next 2 months, Karen complained about everything. My grass was half an inch too long. My car was parked 3 inches over my property line. My trash cans were visible from the street for 27 minutes past the 7 a.m. collection time. Each complaint went to the HOA, and each time Barbara would send me a polite email asking me to address the issue. I complied with every single one, even though most were ridiculous. But the porch light, that's what broke the camel's back. I'd installed a simple, warm-toned LED porch light above my front door. Nothing fancy, just a basic fixture that cast a gentle glow across my porch and front walkway. It was on a sensor that turned it on automatically at dusk and off at dawn. The bulb was 40 watts equivalent, producing about 450 lumens. For context, a typical refrigerator light is brighter. A smartphone screen on full brightness puts out more light. This was nothing, but to Karen, it was the apocalypse. The first email came on a Tuesday morning in late March of 2024. "Dear HOA Board," it began. "I am writing to formally complain about the excessive and disturbing light fixture installed at 42 Maple Drive. This light shines directly into my bedroom window throughout the entire night, disrupting my sleep and causing me severe distress. I demand immediate action to have this light removed or significantly dimmed. This is affecting my health and well-being. Sincerely, Karen Whitmore." I read the email that Barbara had forwarded to me and actually laughed out loud. Karen's house was across the street and down 2 houses. There was no physical way my porch light could reach her bedroom window. There were trees, other houses, and at least 75 feet of distance between us. This was insane. I responded professionally. "Hi, Barbara. I'm confused by this complaint. My porch light is a standard 40-watt LED on a sensor, and Karen's house is too far away to be affected by it. I'm happy to show you the light in person, if needed. Thanks, Marcus." Barbara responded within an hour. "Hi, Marcus. I'll come by this evening to take a look. I'm sure we can resolve this reasonably. See you around 7 p.m. True to her word, Barbara showed up at 7 o'clock that evening. She was wearing her signature red blazer over a white blouse, red glasses perched on her nose, carrying a clipboard. I appreciated that she was taking this seriously, even if the complaint was nonsense. "Marcus, good to see you," she said with a warm smile, shaking my hand. "Mind if I take a look at this infamous porch light?" "Please do," I said, gesturing to the front of my house. We stood in my driveway as the sensor triggered the light. It clicked on, casting a soft amber glow across my porch. I pulled out my phone and showed Barbara the specifications. 40-watt equivalent LED, warm white at 2700 Kelvin, 450 loop. It's aimed downward at the porch, not outward toward the street. Barbara nodded, making notes. Then she did something that impressed me. She walked across the street to Karen's house and looked back at my property. She even walked down to where Karen's bedroom window was and checked the angle. After about 10 minutes, she returned. "Marcus, I'm going to be straight with you," Barbara said, pushing her red glasses up her nose. "There is absolutely no way your porch light is affecting Karen's bedroom. I've checked from every angle. Her complaint is unfounded." "Thank you," I said, relieved. "I thought I was going crazy." "You're not," Barbara said firmly. "I'll send Karen a response explaining that your light is compliant with all HOA regulations and that I found no merit to her complaint. Don't worry about this." I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. 2 days later, I woke up at 3:30 in the morning to what felt like a nuclear explosion of light. I jerked awake, completely disoriented, my room flooded with harsh white light. For a moment, I genuinely thought something catastrophic had happened. An explosion. A fire. Aliens. Something. I stumbled out of bed, shielding my eyes, and made my way to the window. When I pulled back the curtain, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Karen was standing in her front yard in a bathrobe and slippers, surrounded by 6 massive spotlights. These weren't regular outdoor lights. These were construction-grade, industrial spotlights, the kind used for night work on highway projects. Each one looked like it could illuminate a football field, and all 6 of them were aimed directly at my house. My bedroom window? My living room windows? Every single light was positioned to blast my house with the intensity of 1,000 suns. The glare was so bright I could barely look at it. My room was brighter than it would be at noon on a summer day. And there was Karen, standing in the middle of it all, arms crossed, looking up at my house with the most satisfied expression I'd ever seen. When she noticed me at the window, she actually waved. A slow, deliberate, smug wave. That's when I understood this wasn't about the porch light. This was about control. Karen wanted to punish me for not immediately bending to her will. She wanted to make my life miserable until I either removed my completely reasonable porch light or moved away entirely. I grabbed my phone and took photos and videos from every angle. The timestamp clearly showed 3:32 a.m. The brightness was so intense that my phone's camera struggled to adjust. Then I sent everything to Barbara with a simple message. This is what I woke up to. Karen's spotlights are lighting up my entire house. Please help. Barbara responded at 6:15 a.m. I saw your email. This is unacceptable. Emergency HOA board meeting tonight at 7 p.m. at the community center. Both you and Karen are required to attend. The Meadowbrook Estates Community Center was a small building near the neighborhood entrance, usually used for book clubs and children's birthday parties. That evening, it became a courtroom. The HOA board consisted of 5 members. Barbara as president, 2 vice presidents named Tom and Linda, a secretary named Patrea, and a treasurer named Michael. All 5 sat at a table at the front of the room. Folding chairs were set up for residents, and about 20 people had shown up to watch the drama unfold. Karen arrived 15 minutes early, dressed like she was attending a Supreme Court hearing. Navy blue suit, pearl necklace, her hair in a perfect bun. She'd brought a 3-ring binder, full of what I could only assume were evidence of my porch-light crimes. She sat in the front row, back straight, chin raised, ready for battle. I arrived exactly at 7 p.m. Dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, carrying only my phone, with photos and videos of Karen's spotlight assault. Barbara called the meeting to order, her red glasses glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We're here to address an escalating dispute between two residents regarding exterior lighting. Karen, you filed the initial complaint. Please present your case." Karen stood up like she was addressing Congress. "Thank you, Barbara. Members of the board, neighbors, I stand before you today as a victim of light pollution and inconsiderate behavior." She opened her binder with a dramatic flourish. "For the past 2 months, I have endured sleepless nights due to the excessive, blinding porch light installed by Marcus Webb at 42 Maple Drive." She held up printed photos of my house at night. In the photos, my porch light was barely visible, just a small, warm glow. "This light," she continued, "shines directly into my bedroom window, disrupting my circadian rhythm and causing me documented health problems. I have doctor's notes here stating that my recent insomnia and anxiety are directly related to light exposure." Noticed that her doctor's notes were just printouts from WebMD about light pollution and sleep disruption. No actual medical letterhead. No doctor's signature. "According to HOA regulations," Karen continued, "exterior lighting must not create a nuisance for neighboring properties. Marcus Webb's porch light is a clear violation of this rule. I am requesting that the board order the immediate removal of this light or require that it be turned off by 9 p.m. every evening." She sat down, looking triumphant. Several neighbors were nodding sympathetically. Barbara made notes on her clipboard, her expression neutral. "Thank you, Karen," Barbara said. "Marcus, would you like to respond?" I stood up, keeping my voice calm and factual. "Thank you, Barbara. I'll keep this simple. My porch light is a standard 40-watt LED fixture that is fully compliant with all HOA regulations. Barbara personally inspected it and confirmed that it cannot possibly shine into Karen's bedroom due to distance, trees, and the angle of the light. I have the email confirmation of her inspection." I pulled up Barbara's email on my phone and showed it to the board. Barbara nodded in confirmation. "However," I continued, "what Karen didn't mention in her presentation is what happened 2 nights ago at 3:30 in the morning." I pulled up the photos and videos on my phone and passed it to Barbara. "Karen installed 6 industrial spotlights in her yard and aimed all of them directly at my house. These lights are approximately 1,000 watts each, totaling 6,000 watts of directed light at my property. For context, that's roughly 75,000 lumens. A typical stadium floodlight is 80,000 lumens. Karen essentially installed a small stadium lighting system aimed at my bedroom windows." The room erupted in whispers. People were leaning over to look at my phone as Barbara passed it around to the other board members. Karen's face turned bright red. "This," I said, "is actual light pollution. This is an actual nuisance, and this was done deliberately at 3:30 in the morning while I was sleeping, as revenge for a complaint that was already dismissed as unfounded." Barbara held up her hand for quiet. The room settled down. She looked at Karen with an expression that was professional but clearly disappointed. "Karen, is this true? Did you install these spotlights?" Karen stood up, her composure cracking. "I have every right to install lighting on my own property. If Marcus is allowed to disturb my sleep with his light, then I am entitled to." "Karen," Barbara interrupted, her voice firm. "Marcus's porch light was inspected and found to be compliant. I personally verified that it does not reach your property. What you did is not only a violation of HOA rules, but it's also potentially harassment. Industrial spotlights aimed at a neighbor's home at 3:30 in the morning. That's beyond unacceptable." "But Karen started. "I'm not finished," Barbara said, and there was steel in her voice now. She raised her hand slightly, a gesture that commanded silence. "The board will be voting on this matter. First, regarding Marcus's porch light. All those in favor of finding it compliant with HOA regulations and dismissing Karen's complaint." All 5 board members raised their hands. "Unanimous," Barbara said. "Marcus, your porch light is fine. Keep it." Karen's mouth fell open. "Second, Barbara continued, regarding Karen's spotlight installation, all those in favor of finding it in violation of HOA nuisance regulations and requiring immediate removal. Again, all 5 hands went up. Karen, Barbara said, looking directly at her, you have 48 hours to remove those spotlights. If they're not gone by Friday at 5 p.m., you'll be fined $200 per day until they're removed. This meeting is adjourned. The room buzzed with conversation as people filed out. Several neighbors came up to me, expressing support and disgust at Karen's behavior. One elderly man named George patted me on the shoulder and said, "That woman's been making people miserable for years. Good on you for standing up to her." Karen stormed out without speaking to anyone, her face purple with rage. I thought it was over. Primera rea, lead it. The spotlights came down the next day, and for a week, everything was quiet. My porch light stayed on its sensor, casting its harmless glow every evening. I even waved at Karen once when I saw her getting her mail. She glared at me and went inside, but I should have known better. Karen wasn't done, not even close. The following Monday, I received a certified letter, not from the HOA, from Karen's attorney. The letter claimed that my porch light was causing her severe emotional distress and mental anguish, and that she was prepared to file a civil lawsuit for damages if I didn't remove it within 10 days. The letter listed potential damages at $20,000. I sat at my kitchen table, reading this ridiculous legal threat, and something inside me snapped. Not in an angry way. In a creative way, Karen wanted to play games about lights. Fine. I was an electrical engineer with a specialty in lighting systems. I knew maritime law. I knew building codes, and I knew exactly how to solve this problem in the most spectacular, perfectly legal way possible. I picked up my phone and called my old college friend Dave, who worked for a company that manufactured navigational equipment for harbors and marinas. "Dave," I said when he answered, "remember when you joked that I should put a lighthouse in my backyard?" "Yeah," Dave said, laughing. "Why? How much would it cost to actually build one?" There was a pause. "Wait, are you serious?" "Completely serious," I said. "I need a functioning lighthouse in my backyard. How do we make that happen?" Dave was quiet for a moment, and then he started laughing. Really laughing. "Marcus, you magnificent lunatic, let me make some calls. I'll get back to you in an hour." I hung up and looked out my window at Karen's house across the street. She was standing at her window, watching my house like always, probably wondering what her lawyer's letter would accomplish. What it would accomplish, I thought, was the most epic, most beautiful, most perfectly legal revenge in HOA history. A lighthouse. In my backyard, fully functional, fully legal, and aimed exactly where it needed to be. This was going to be good. Dave called me back in exactly 53 minutes. I could hear the excitement in his voice before he even said hello. "Marcus, I've got good news and better news," he said. "The good news is that building a residential lighthouse is completely legal. The better news is that I can get you everything you need at cost through my company's supplier network." I grabbed a notebook and pen. "Tell me everything." "Okay, so here's the deal," Dave said. "Lighthouses aren't regulated the same way you'd think. They're not classified as commercial structures if they're on private property and not used for actual navigation. That means you don't need special maritime permits. You just need standard building permits from your local municipality, same as if you were building a gazebo or a large shed." "And the HOA?" I asked. "That's the beautiful part," Dave said, and I could hear him grinning. "I looked up your HOA bylaws online. They're public record. Your HOA has regulations about building height, setbacks from property lines, and architectural compatibility. But here's what they don't have: any specific regulations about lighthouses, towers, or rotating light fixtures. Why would they? Nobody's ever tried to build one in a suburban neighborhood." My heart was racing. "So if I follow the height restrictions and setback requirements, you can build a fully functional lighthouse in your backyard, and there's not a damn thing the HOA can do about it," Dave finished. I already checked your local zoning. Residential structures can be up to 35 feet tall without special permits. That's enough for a proper lighthouse. How much are we talking? I asked. Dave paused, doing mental math. For a 30-foot structure with a rotating beacon, foundation work, electrical installation, and all the bells and whistles, I can get it done for around $45,000. Maybe $50,000 if you want premium materials. I took a deep breath. I had about $60,000 in savings set aside for home improvements. This qualified. Let's do it. But Dave, I need it to be perfect. I need it to meet every single code requirement. No shortcuts. Everything documented. Because Karen is going to fight this with everything she has. Already ahead of you, Dave said. I'm emailing you plans from a naval architect. These are based on actual Coast Guard lighthouse specifications, scaled down for residential use. Your local building department will love them. When do you want to start? I looked out my window at Karen's house. Her living room light was on, and I could see her silhouette pacing back and forth, probably on the phone with her lawyer, as soon as possible. Over the next 3 days, I became an expert in lighthouse construction, building codes, and maritime lighting regulations. Dave sent me comprehensive plans for a structure he called the Meadowbrook Beacon. It was a 30-foot octagonal tower built on a concrete foundation, with a circular platform at the top housing a rotating Fresnel lens and light assembly. The design was based on the Admiralty Head Lighthouse in Washington State, scaled down to exactly 34 feet, 11 inches tall, just under the 35-foot residential limit. The plans were beautiful. Detailed engineering drawings, material specifications, electrical schematics, everything. Dave had even included historical research showing that similar residential lighthouses existed in coastal towns across America. This wasn't unprecedented. It was just unprecedented in a suburb. I took the plans to the Meadowbrook Township Building Department on a Thursday morning. The clerk at the counter, a middle-aged woman named Susan, looked at the application and then looked at me with confused amusement. Is this a joke? She asked. A lighthouse in Meadowbrook Estates. Completely serious, I said. All the plans are here. Structural engineering report, electrical specifications, foundation requirements, everything's to code. Susan flipped through the plans, her expression changing from amused to genuinely impressed. These are professional. Who drew these up? A naval architect, I said. Former Coast Guard. She spent 20 minutes reviewing every page, occasionally making notes or measuring dimensions with a ruler. Finally, she looked up at me. Mr. Webb, I've worked here for 16 years, and this is the most thorough permit application I've ever seen. Your structure is under the height limit, meets all setback requirements, and the engineering is sound. I don't see any reason to deny this. How long for approval? I asked. Standard review is 3 to 4 weeks, Susan said. But honestly, this is so well documented that I can probably fast-track it. Give me 2 weeks. I left the building department feeling triumphant. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I could start construction on the most spectacular, most perfectly legal middle finger in HOA history. But I needed to do one more thing. I needed to make sure the HOA couldn't stop me. That evening, I sent a formal letter to Barbara and the HOA board. It was polite, professional, and thorough. Dear HOA board members, I am writing to inform you of my intention to construct a decorative lighthouse structure in my backyard at 42 Maple Drive. I have submitted all necessary building permits to Meadowbrook Township, and the structure will comply with all local building codes and zoning regulations, per the Meadowbrook Estates HOA bylaws. Specifically, Section 7, Paragraph 3. I am providing advance notice of this construction project. The structure will be 34 feet, 11 inches in height, meeting the 35-foot maximum for residential structures. It'll be set back 30 feet from the rear property line and 80 feet from the street, exceeding the required 20-foot and 50-foot setbacks, respectively. The structure will be architecturally compatible with the neighborhood, featuring traditional lighthouse design elements, including white painted siding and a black lantern room. The rotating light fixture will operate during evening hours only and will be equipped with appropriate shielding to direct light upward and outward. not toward neighboring properties, except where unavoidable, due to the rotating nature of lighthouse beacons. I have attached the complete architectural plans, engineering reports, and building permit application for your review. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Respectfully, Marcus Webb. I sent the email at 7 p.m. on a Thursday evening. Barbara responded at 7:45 p.m. Marcus, I need to make sure I'm reading this correctly. You're building a lighthouse. An actual lighthouse. In your backyard? I replied immediately. Yes. A fully functional, code-compliant, historically accurate lighthouse. 30 feet tall with a rotating beacon. 3 minutes later, I need to see these plans in person. Can I come by tomorrow evening? Absolutely. 6 p.m. Work for you. I'll be there. Barbara arrived at exactly 6 o'clock on Friday evening, carrying her ever-present clipboard and wearing her red blazer. Despite the warm weather, I had the plans spread out on my dining room table, along with the building permit application, engineering reports, and a 3-ring binder full of legal research about residential lighthouses. Marcus, Barbara said, sitting down at the table and adjusting her red glasses, I have to admit, when I read your email, I thought you were joking. But these plans... She studied the drawings carefully. These are serious. Completely serious, I said. I'm an electrical engineer, Barbara. When Karen sent me that legal threat about my porch light, something snapped. If she wants to fight about lights, I'm going to give her the most spectacular, most legal light show in the history of suburban America. Barbara laughed. Actually laughed. It was the first time I'd heard her laugh, and it was genuine. This is insane. And brilliant. And completely legal, isn't it? Every single aspect, I confirmed. I've spent the last week researching this. The HOA bylaws don't specifically prohibit lighthouses, towers, or decorative structures. As long as I meet the height limit and setback requirements, which I do, there's nothing you can do to stop me even if you wanted to. Barbara studied the plans for another 10 minutes, occasionally asking questions about the foundation, the electrical system, and the light fixture. Finally, she sat back and looked at me with something like admiration. Karen is going to lose her mind. That's the plan, I said. You know she's going to fight this, right? Barbara? Saeed. She'll make it her life's mission to stop you. Let her try, I said. I've made sure everything is absolutely by the book. If she wants to challenge this, she'll have to challenge the building department, the township, and about 100 years of legal precedent for residential lighthouses. Barbara was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled and raised her hand in a small gesture of approval. Marcus, officially, as HOA president, I have to tell you that this is the most unusual construction project we've ever had in Meadowbrook Estates. Unofficially, she leaned forward. I can't wait to see Karen's face when she finds out. That woman has been making my life difficult for 3 years. She files complaints about everything and everyone. Last month, she reported Tom for having his garbage cans visible from the street for 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Marcus, she timed it. I had no idea it was that bad. I said, most people just comply with her demands because it's easier than fighting. Barbara said. But you're actually standing up to her. Legally. Perfectly. I respect that. She stood up and extended her hand. You have my full support. If Karen tries to stop this through the HOA, she'll have to go through me first. We shook hands, and I felt a surge of confidence. Barbara Chun, the HOA president, was on my side. This was really happening. The building permit was approved in 12 days. Susan from the building department called me personally to let me know. Mr. Webb, your lighthouse permit is approved. I showed it to everyone in the office. We're all rooting for you. Whatever your neighbor did to deserve this, it must have been spectacular. You have no idea, I said. The next day, I signed a contract with a construction company specializing in unique structures. The owner, a man named Rick, had built everything from tree houses to personal observatories. When I showed him the lighthouse plans, his eyes lit up. This is the coolest project I've had in 10 years, he said. When do we start? Monday, I said. How long will it take? Foundation work is 3 weeks. Tower construction is another 4 weeks. Light installation and finishing is 1 week. Call it 8 weeks total. Maybe 9 if we hit weather delays. Perfect, I said. I didn't tell Karen. I didn't tell any of the neighbors, except Barbara. I wanted the construction to start before Karen had a chance to organize opposition. Surprise was my greatest weapon. Monday morning at 7:30 a.m., a cement truck pulled up to my house. Then another. Then a excavator on a flatbed trailer. By 8 a.m., Rick and his crew of 5 workers were in my backyard, marking out the foundation site. I was in my home office, watching through the window and drinking coffee, when I saw Karen come running out of her house. She was in yoga pants and a sweatshirt, her hair uncombed, and she looked panicked. She ran across the street and into my yard without hesitation. I met her at the back gate. "Good morning, Karen." "What is this?" she demanded, gesturing wildly at the construction equipment. "What are you doing? Building a lighthouse?" Premeditated calmly. Karen stared at me like I'd just spoken in tongues. What? A lighthouse. 30 feet tall, fully functional, rotating beacon. "Want to see the plans?" Her face went through several colors: white, pink, red, purple. "You can't build a lighthouse. This is a residential neighborhood." "Already got the permit," I said, pulling out my phone and showing her the approved application. "Everything's legal. The structure meets all height restrictions, setback requirements, and building codes. The HOA will never allow this," Karen shouted. "Already notified them," I said. "Barbara reviewed the plans herself. There's nothing in the bylaws that prohibits it." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "This is because of me, isn't you? This is revenge. This is because you sued me over a porch light," I said, my voice still calm. "You sent me a legal threat demanding $20,000 because my 40-watt LED bothered you, so I decided to upgrade my lighting situation. Maritime grade illumination. The beacon will be visible for several miles. Should be quite spectacular at night." "I'll stop this," Karen hissed. "I'll call the police, the building department, everyone." "Go ahead," I said. "All my permits are in order. All my documentation is perfect. You'll just waste your time and their time." Karen turned and stormed off, already pulling out her phone. I watched her go, then turned back to watch Rick's crew pouring concrete for the foundation. The excavator had already dug a hole 6 feet deep and 12 feet in diameter. By the end of the day, they'd have the foundation poured and setting. This was really happening. Karen spent the entire day on her phone. I could see her pacing in her yard, gesturing angrily, probably calling everyone she could think of. The police showed up at 10 a.m. A young officer named Rodriguez came to my door, looking apologetic. "Mr. Webb, we got a complaint about unpermitted construction." I showed him my permits. He looked them over, nodded, and handed them back. "Everything looks good, sir. Sorry to bother you." "No problem, officer. Just a concerned neighbor." Rodriguez glanced across the street at Karen, who was standing in her yard watching us. He lowered his voice. "Is she the one who complained?" "Probably," I said. "Yeah. We've been to her house before. Multiple noise complaints, light complaints, all kinds of stuff, usually unfounded." He tipped his hat. "Have a good day, sir. Good luck with your lighthouse." "Thank you, officer." The building inspector came at 2 p.m. Karen must have called the township. Inspector was a man named Phil, who I'd met during the permit review. He walked around the foundation, checked the depth, reviewed the concrete mix, and gave me a thumbs up. "Looking good, Marcus." "Karen Whitmore called my office 4 times today, demanding I shut you down. I told her everything's legal." He grinned. "She's not happy." "I imagined not," I said. By the end of the first week, the foundation was complete, and Rick's crew had started assembling the tower structure. It was octagonal, built from pressure-treated lumber and composite materials, with white vinyl siding that looked like traditional painted wood. Each day, it grew taller. 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. The neighbors were fascinated. People would slow down driving past my house, staring at the growing structure. Some stopped to ask questions. I was honest with everyone. I'm building a lighthouse? Yes. A real one. Yes. It's legal. Yes. The light will actually work. Most people thought it was amazing. Coolest thing I've ever seen in this neighborhood, said my next-door neighbor, an older man named Frank. If I'd known we could build lighthouses, I would have built one years ago. A few people were concerned. Won't the light be disruptive? Asked a woman named Jenny from 3 houses down. The light is designed for maritime use, I explained. It rotates, so each direction only gets a flash every few seconds. It's not like a permanent spotlight, and it's aimed upward and outward, not directly at houses. But Karen was apoplectic. She filed 3 more complaints with the HOA in the first week. Barbara rejected all of them. She filed a complaint with the township. They rejected it. She even tried to start a petition to change the HOA bylaws to ban lighthouse structures retroactively. That didn't work. Either retroactive rule changes aren't legal. By the end of week 3, the tower structure was complete. It stood 34 feet, 11 inches tall, a beautiful white octagonal tower with a black metal railing around the top platform. Rick and his crew had built stairs inside leading up to the lantern room, which was currently empty, waiting for the light assembly. I climbed up the stairs for the first time on a Saturday afternoon. The view from the top was incredible. I could see the entire neighborhood laid out below me. I could see Karen's house directly across the street. I could see her backyard, her windows, her patio, and that's when I realized something perfect. The lighthouse was positioned so that when the rotating beacon was active, it would sweep directly across Karen's bedroom window 4 times per minute. Not constantly, not as a spotlight, but as a regular, rhythmic flash of light, every 15 seconds. All night long. Maritime law required lighthouse beacons to be visible and unobstructed. There was no legal way to shield the light from Karen's house without violating lighthouse operational standards. It was perfect. It was poetic. It was completely, absolutely legal. Dave arrived the following Monday with the beacon assembly. It came in 6 large crates, shipped from a marine supply company in Maine. The main component was a genuine Fresnel lens, 12 inches in diameter, made of precision-cut glass, designed to focus and amplify light. Behind it was a rotating mechanism powered by an electric motor, the same type used in actual Coast Guard lighthouses, just scaled down. The light source itself was a high-intensity LED array producing 12,000 lumens. For comparison, Karen's industrial spotlights had been around 15,000 lumens each, but spread out. This was 12,000 lumens, focused through a Fresnel lens into a narrow beam that would be visible for miles. The rotation speed was 15 revolutions per minute, creating a distinctive flash pattern. 3 seconds on, 12 seconds dark, repeated continuously. Rick's crew spent 2 days installing the beacon assembly. They mounted it on a precision bearing system that allowed it to rotate smoothly and silently. They connected it to a dedicated electrical circuit with backup power. They installed a control system that would activate the beacon automatically at dusk and deactivate it at dawn, just like my original porch light. Finally, on a Wednesday afternoon in late May, 8 weeks after construction began, the Meadowbrook beacon was complete. White tower, black lantern room, genuine Fresnel lens, rotating beacon, the most beautiful, most ridiculous, most perfectly legal structure in the history of suburban HOA warfare. Rick handed me the control panel. "Want to test it?" "Absolutely," I said. We climbed up to the lantern room. The beacon assembly sat in the center of the platform, the Fresnel lens catching the afternoon sunlight and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. Rick flipped a switch on the control panel. The motor hummed to life. The beacon began to rotate, slowly, smoothly, exactly 15 revolutions per minute. Rick flipped another switch, and the LED array activated. Even in broad daylight, the beam was visible, a bright white light that swept across the neighborhood like a lighthouse, searching for ships in the fog. We stood there for a moment, watching the light rotate. Then Rick started laughing. "Marcus, this is the greatest thing I've ever built. Whatever your neighbor did to you, she's going to regret it for the rest of her life." "She already does," I said. We climbed down and stood in my backyard, watching the beacon rotate from below. The light swept across the sky, across the trees, across the neighborhood, and every 15 seconds, it swept directly across Karen's house. Her bedroom window lit up for 3 seconds. 10 went dark. Lit up. Dark. Lit up. Dark. Like clockwork. Like the ocean. Like justice. I pulled out my phone and called Barbara. It's done. Want to come see?" Barbara arrived 15 minutes later, still in her work clothes, red blazer and all. She stood in my backyard, hands on her hips, staring up at the Meadowbrook beacon. The light continued its rotation, sweeping across the neighborhood. When it passed over Karen's house, Barbara actually laughed and raised her hand in a gesture of pure delight. "Marcus," she said, shaking her head, "this is absolutely insane." "Wait until you see it at night," I said. That evening, as the sun set, the automatic sensor triggered the beacon. The LED array blazed to life, and the Meadowbrook beacon began its nightly duty. The beam swept across the darkening sky, bright enough to see from miles away, bright enough to light up every house it passed, bright enough to turn Karen's bedroom window into a strobe light 4 times per minute. I stood in my backyard with a beer, watching my creation work exactly as planned. Neighbors came out of their houses to watch. Some took photos. Some applauded. Frank from next door came over and shook my hand. "Best neighbor I've ever had," he said. And across the street, in her bedroom, I could see Karen standing at her window, staring at the lighthouse with an expression of pure, helpless fury. Every 15 seconds, the beacon swept across her face. Flash, dark. Flash, dark. Flash, dark. "Welcome to Maritime Law, Karen." The first week of Lighthouse operation was glorious. Every evening at dusk, the Meadowbrook beacon roared to life, sending its powerful beam across the neighborhood in perfect 15-second intervals. My neighbors loved it. Kids would come outside to watch the light sweep past. Elderly couples sat on their porches timing the rotations. One family even started calling it the Webb Lighthouse and posted photos on social media. Karen, however, was living in her own personal nightmare. Every 15 seconds, her bedroom window lit up like a stadium. Flash, dark, flash, dark, all night long. She tried blackout curtains, but the light was so powerful it bled around the edges. She tried sleeping in different rooms, but the beacon's rotation pattern meant it hit every window on the front side of her house. On day 3, she called the police again. Officer Rodriguez showed up, took one look at the situation, and couldn't stop smiling. "Ma'am, it's a legally permitted structure. There's nothing we can do. But I can't sleep," Karen shrieked. "Karen shrieked, have you considered moving to a room on the other side of your house?" Rodriguez suggested, barely hiding his amusement. On day 5, Karen filed an emergency complaint with the HOA, demanding an immediate special meeting. Barbara, true to her word, scheduled it for the following Tuesday evening. This time, the community center was packed. Word had spread about the lighthouse, and at least 40 residents showed up to watch. Karen arrived with a lawyer, an actual attorney in a 3-piece suit carrying a briefcase. She'd also brought what looked like a PowerPoint presentation on a laptop. She meant business. Barbara called the meeting to order, adjusting her red glasses. "This is a special meeting to address Karen Whitmore's emergency complaint regarding the lighthouse structure at Maple Drive. Karen, you have the floor." Karen stood up, her lawyer beside her. She clicked her laptop, and a slide appeared on the projector screen. Legal violations of the Webb Lighthouse? She'd actually made a presentation. Members of the board, neighbors, and concerned citizens. Karen began, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "For the past week, I have been subjected to cruel and unusual punishment in the form of a so-called decorative lighthouse that is clearly designed to harass and torment me. This structure violates multiple laws and regulations. She clicked to the next slide. First, light pollution laws. The EPA guidelines state that exterior lighting should not create a nuisance for neighboring properties. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Actually, those are guidelines, not laws, and they don't apply to navigational lighting. Karen glared at him, then continued. Second, the structure poses a safety hazard. The light is so bright it could distract drivers. Is there any evidence of traffic incidents? Barbara asked. Well, no, but next concern. Karen's face reddened. The property value? This ridiculous structure is bringing down property values for the entire neighborhood. Actually, interrupted Frank, my next-door neighbor standing up from the audience, I just had my house appraised last week. The appraiser said the lighthouse is a unique neighborhood feature that might actually increase property values. People love quirky stuff. Several neighbors nodded in agreement. Someone in the back shouted, I think it's cool. Karen was losing control. This is harassment. He built this specifically to torture me. I stood up calmly. Karen, you sued me over a 40-watt porch light. You installed industrial spotlights aimed at my bedroom at 3 in the morning. You've filed 17 complaints against me in 6 months. If anyone's being harassed here, it's me. I just decided to upgrade my exterior lighting with something more substantial. The room erupted in laughter. Even some of the board members were smiling. Barbara raised her hand for silence. Karen, Barbara said, her voice firm but not unkind. Marcus's lighthouse is fully permitted, meets all building codes, and complies with every HOA regulation. There is nothing in our bylaws that prohibits decorative towers or navigational lighting. Your complaint is dismissed, but you can't just... The decision is final, Barbara said, and there was steel in her voice. She raised her hand in a gesture of finality. This meeting is adjourned. Karen grabbed her laptop and stormed out, her lawyer following behind, looking embarrassed. The neighbors applauded as she left. Several people came up to me afterwards, shaking my hand and asking for tours of the lighthouse. That night, something unexpected happened. A local news blogger who lived 2 neighborhoods over had heard about the lighthouse and posted about it on Twitter. The post included photos of the Meadowbrook beacon in full operation, with the caption, Suburban man builds functioning lighthouse to fight HOA Karen. This is the most epic petty revenge I've ever seen. The post went viral. By morning, it had 20,000 retweets. By noon, 50,000. Local news stations started calling me. Would you be willing to do an interview? Can we film the lighthouse? What's the story behind this? I agreed to one interview with a local TV station. The reporter, a cheerful woman named Amanda, showed up with a camera crew on Thursday afternoon. We did the interview in my backyard with the lighthouse in the background. So, Marcus, Amanda said, holding a microphone, tell us why you built a 30-foot lighthouse in your suburban backyard. I explained the whole story. The porch light, Karen's complaints, the spotlights at 3 a.m. The legal threat, the decision to build something that was perfectly legal but absolutely spectacular. And the light shines directly at your neighbor's house? Amanda asked. It's a rotating beacon, I explained. It shines in all directions equally. That's how lighthouse beacons work. Every house in the neighborhood gets the same flash every 15 seconds. It's just that Karen's house happens to be directly in the rotation path. The segment aired that evening on the 6 o'clock news. It was titled Lighthouse of Justice. Man's epic response to HOA complaint. The story was perfect. They showed the lighthouse rotating, interviewed supportive neighbors, and even got a shot of Karen's house with the light flashing across it. Within hours, national news websites picked it up. BuzzFeed, Reddit, Twitter, Instagram. The story exploded. Florida man builds lighthouse to spite neighbor became a trending topic. People were making memes. Someone created a GoFundMe to help me with maintenance costs, even though I didn't need it. The lighthouse had become a cultural phenomenon. tourism started. People from neighboring towns would drive through Meadowbrook Estates just to see the lighthouse. On weekends, there would be a dozen cars slowly driving past my house, people taking photos. Some asked if they could come up and see the beacon up close. I started giving tours on Saturday afternoons. Families would come with their kids. I'd explain how the Fresnel lens worked, and they'd climb up to see the view. The neighborhood loved it. Local businesses started using the Lighthouse in their advertising. Located near the famous Webb Lighthouse, a coffee shop started selling Beacon Blend coffee. A pizza place offered Lighthouse special pizzas with a picture of my tower on the box. But the best part, Karen couldn't handle the attention. She started getting recognized in public as that Karen from the Lighthouse story. People would point and whisper. Someone even confronted her at the grocery store. "You tried to sue him over a porch light? Lady, you're the villain of the year." 2 weeks after the story went viral, I saw a for sale sign go up in Karen's yard. She was moving. Actually moving. The lighthouse had broken her. I was sitting on my back porch that evening, watching the beacon start its nightly rotation, when Barbara stopped by. She was smiling, her red glasses catching the last rays of sunlight. "I heard Karen's moving," she said, sitting down in the chair next to me. "Yep," I said. "Saw the sign this morning." Barbara laughed and raised her hand in a toast gesture with her water bottle. "Marcus, in 3 years as HOA president, I have never been more proud of a resident. You stood up to a bully. You did it legally, and you created something that brought the entire community together. The lighthouse is the best thing that's ever happened to this neighborhood." "Thanks, Barbara," I said. "I couldn't have done it without your support." "So what happens now?" she asked. "Are you going to keep running it?" I looked up at the lighthouse, watching the beam sweep across the darkening sky. "You know what? I think I am, but not as revenge anymore, as something better." "What do you mean?" I smiled. "I've been thinking, what if we turned this into something that actually helps people? A community gathering space, educational tours for school kids, maybe partnered with the Coast Guard Historical Society." Barbara's eyes lit up. "Marcus, that's brilliant. The HOA would fully support that." "Then let's do it," I said. The beacon swept across Karen's now empty house, and I felt something unexpected. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just peace. The war was over, and somehow I'd built something beautiful out of spite. Karen's house sold in 3 weeks. The buyers were a young couple named Jason and Michelle with twin 5-year-old daughters. I met them the day they came to view the property. They were standing in Karen's driveway, looking up at my lighthouse with expressions of pure delight. "Is that real?" Jason asked, pointing at the beacon. "Fully functional," I said, walking over to introduce myself. "I'm Marcus, your future neighbor. Welcome to Meadowbrook Estates." "This is the coolest neighborhood I've ever seen," Michelle said, her daughters already running toward my yard to get a closer look. "The realtor told us about the lighthouse. That's actually why we wanted to see this house." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Are you kidding?" Jason laughed. "We looked at 15 houses, but when we saw the listing that said across from famous Webb Lighthouse, we knew this was the one. Our girls are obsessed with lighthouses." I gave them a tour that afternoon. The twins, Emma and Lily, climbed the stairs with wide eyes, asking a million questions about how the light worked, why it rotated, and whether any ships had ever visited. When we reached the top and they saw the Fresnel lens up close, they actually squealed with excitement. "Mr. Marcus," Emma asked, "can we come visit the lighthouse sometimes?" "Anytime you want," I said. "In fact, I'm planning to start doing community events here. Story time for kids, science demonstrations, that kind of thing." Michelle looked at me with genuine appreciation. "You know, the realtor told us about the previous owner, about how she tried to stop you from building this. I'm glad she's gone. This is magical." Karen moved out on a Saturday in mid. I watched from my window as the moving trucks loaded up her furniture. Her pearl necklace is probably packed carefully in bubble wrap somewhere. She didn't look at my house once, didn't wave goodbye to any neighbors, just got in her car and drove away, leaving behind the scene of her greatest defeat. That evening, Barbara came by with a bottle of champagne. She was wearing casual clothes for once, though her red glasses were still perched on her nose. We sat on my back porch, watching the beacon start its evening rotation. "To victory," Barbara said, raising her glass. "To community," I corrected, clinking my glass against hers. "Marquess, I want to talk to you about something," Barbara said, settling into her chair. "You mentioned turning the lighthouse into a community space. I've been thinking about that, and I want to make it official. The HOA wants to sponsor it. Sponsor it how? Primera. Asketh." Barbara smiled. "We have a community events budget that usually goes toward the annual block party and holiday decorations. What if we redirected some of that money to support Lighthouse programming, educational tours, kids events, maybe even partnering with local schools for field trips?" "Barbara, that's incredible," I said. "But why would the HOA do that?" "Because you've done something amazing here," Barbara said, and she raised her hand in that familiar gesture of approval. "You took a petty conflict and turned it into something that brought the entire neighborhood together. Property inquiries have gone up 30% since the lighthouse went viral. People want to live here because of what you built. The HOA should support that." Over the next few months, the Meadowbrook beacon transformed from a revenge project into a genuine community landmark. With Barbara's support and HOA funding, we created a schedule of events. Saturday morning Lighthouse Explorers for kids, where I taught them about optics, navigation, and maritime history. The program became so popular we had to add a second session. Sunset at the beacon evenings, twice a month, where neighbors could climb up to watch the beacon activate at dusk. People brought wine and cheese. Made it a social event. Partnership with the local elementary school for 4th grade field trips about light and engineering. Teachers loved it because it made science tangible and exciting. A Lighthouse Stories night where elderly residents shared their memories of visiting real lighthouses during their lives. Frank, my neighbor, told a beautiful story about proposing to his wife at a lighthouse in Maine 60 years ago. The lighthouse also became a memorial site. When a longtime resident named Dorothy passed away, her family asked if they could hold a small remembrance ceremony at the beacon. She'd loved watching the light from her window every evening. We held the service at sunset, and as we shared memories of Dorothy, the beacon activated right on schedule, sweeping across the sky like it was guiding her home. There wasn't a dry eye there. Local businesses continued to embrace the lighthouse. The coffee shop donated free coffee for Saturday morning kids programs. The pizza place sponsored a Lighthouse Pizza Night fundraiser that brought in donations for beacon maintenance. Even the local newspaper did a feature story titled "From Spite to Light," how one man's revenge became a community treasure. Jason and Michelle, the new neighbors, became close friends. Their daughters visited the lighthouse almost daily, helping me clean the lens and check the equipment. Emma decided she wanted to be a lighthouse keeper when she grew up. Lily wanted to be an engineer like me. Their enthusiasm reminded me why I'd loved engineering in the first place, the pure joy of building something meaningful. One evening in September, about 4 months after Karen had moved away, I was doing routine maintenance on the beacon when I heard someone climbing the stairs. It was Barbara, slightly out of breath from the climb, carrying a folder. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said, handing me the folder. Inside were printouts of emails and letters, dozens of them, all addressed to the HOA. "These started coming in last week," Barbara explained. "Read them." I read through them, my eyes widening with each one. "Dear H, we visited Meadowbrook Estates to see the famous lighthouse, and were so impressed with the community spirit. We're now considering buying a home in your neighborhood. The lighthouse has made national news and put Meadowbrook on the map. As a current resident, I'm proud to live here. My daughter attended the Lighthouse Explorers program and hasn't stopped talking about it. Thank you for supporting this amazing community resource. I'm a veteran Coast Guard member, and seeing a community embrace maritime tradition like this fills my heart. Well done." There were 23 letters total. Every single one was positive. Many specifically mentioned that the lighthouse made them want to move to Meadowbrook Estates. "Marcus," Barbara said, pushing her red glasses up, "the board is voting next week on making the lighthouse an official HOA landmark. We want to add it to our community bylaws as a protected structure. That means future boards can't ever demand its removal. I felt a lump in my throat. Barbara, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep running it, Barbara said simply. Say you'll keep making this community better. Of course I will, I said. The vote was unanimous. 5 board members, 5 votes in favor. The Meadowbrook beacon officially became a protected community landmark. Barbara even commissioned a small plaque that we mounted at the base of the tower. The Meadowbrook beacon built 2024. A symbol of persistence, community spirit, and the power of doing things the right way. Protected community landmark 1 year after the lighthouse was completed, we held an anniversary celebration. Over 100 people showed up. Neighbors, local officials, news reporters, even a representative from the Coast Guard Historical Society who presented me with an official maritime flag to fly from the lighthouse. Dave, my friend who'd helped with the original design, made a speech. When Marcus first called me about building a lighthouse, I thought he was crazy. But what he created isn't just a structure. It's a reminder that when someone tries to dim your light, sometimes the answer is to shine even brighter. The crowd applauded. Frank brought out a cake shaped like a lighthouse. Kids ran around playing tag while adults socialized and took photos. The sun began to set, and everyone gathered to watch the beacon activate, like we were all participating in an ancient maritime ritual. As the light blazed to life and began its rotation, I looked around at the faces of my neighbors. These weren't just people who lived near me anymore. They were a community, brought together by something that had started as petty revenge and transformed into genuine connection. Barbara stood next to me, hands in her pockets, watching the beacon with satisfaction. You know what the best part is? Ide. What's that? Karen tried to make your life miserable over a 40-watt porch light, and because of that, you built something that brought joy to hundreds of people. That's not just revenge. That's alchemy, turning spite into gold. I laughed. I'd never thought of it that way. Well, you should, Barbara said, raising her hand one final time in that gesture I'd come to associate with her approval and friendship. You're a lighthouse keeper now, Marcus. Not because you built a tower, but because you showed people how to turn darkness into light. 6 months later, I received a letter, no return address, postmarked from 2 states away. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 words written in Karen's handwriting. You won. Congratulations. I read it twice, then filed it away in a drawer. But the truth was, it had stopped being about winning a long time ago. Karen had moved on to torment some other neighborhood, and I genuinely hoped she'd find peace somewhere. As for me, I had a community to serve and a lighthouse to maintain. Every evening, as the sun sets over Meadowbrook Estates, the beacon activates. It sweeps across the sky, across the homes, across the lives of everyone who lives here. Kids time their bedtime routines by it. Couples share their first kiss under its light. Old friends meet on their porches to watch it together. And sometimes, late at night, I climb up to the lantern room and sit with the Fresnel lens, watching the light rotate. I think about how I came here 6 months after buying my dream house, just wanting peace and quiet. How a simple porch light turned into a war. How that war turned into a lighthouse. And how that lighthouse turned into something I never expected. A home. The Meadowbrook beacon stands 34 feet, 11 inches tall. It produces 12,000 lumens of light. It rotates 15 times per minute, and every 15 seconds, it reminds everyone who sees it that sometimes the best response to darkness isn't to fight back with more darkness. Sometimes, you just need to build a bigger light.